at last check, 1.9 million, 1.9 million views.
People, passion, power. Yeah. People. Got the people.
All right, welcome back to People, Passion, Power. Today, our guest is a friend of mine. He's also my writing coach and someone I've got to know pretty well over the last 3 months. And that is Azul Terronez. Welcome to People, Passion, Power. Thanks for joining us this morning. And boy, I got a lot of questions for you today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. What I'm excited about with the Azul is your background is you're an educator, you're a best-selling author, you're a co-founder of an organization called Authors Who Lead, where you help people write books. And then you conducted a TEDx talk with, I think at last check, 1.9 million views. So when I say all of that, does your head explode? What goes?
Well, I am a bit surprised, to be honest, that because all that shift happened in the last 5 years. You know, those things that you mentioned weren't a part of my life 5 years ago. So it does surprise me still to hear that.
So they weren't a part of your life 5 years ago. I'll go there with you quickly. Did you have a mental shift? Were you working in a direction? Like, where were you prior, and then how did you get there?
Well, I was working as a teacher and university faculty member for Graduate School of Education. I'd been a principal before for many years. So we're 24 years into a career of education. And I thought, I think there's something more in me. Like, this isn't the end of an era for an educator, 10 more years or 15 more years, whatever it would be to retire. I was thinking, I think there's something more. So I started to learn and study about people that I admired who were doing things online or creating these businesses. And I just started wondering, what could I do? What gift could I share with the world, or what could I transition into that seemed like it would serve a bigger purpose? So that's when I started thinking about writing a book. I tell people I thought about it for 24 years. And it took me 24 years and 30 days to write that book, because one of my students had asked me, hey, because I published a lot of young people. My goal was to get every 8th grader in my class to be a published author. So after they went through my classes, they would be able to have submitted a manuscript that was part of a anthology, or they published their own book. So we were doing like a reading fair where everyone was coming to read books from each other, their own books. And they said, Mr. Terronez, where is your book? I want to put your book out. And I just looked at him dumbfounded and said, I don't have a book. Uh-huh. He said, well, what do you mean? Why don't you have a book? And I really thought about lying for the second, like, maybe I'll just make it up. Like, I didn't have time. I don't know. But the truth was, I was just terrified to put myself out there. Young people were really resilient. They're like, whatever. So that was the day I decided I'm going to write this book. And I wrote that book in about 30 days and realized that I had been waiting on a hope for something, that maybe I would be good enough to write this book. So that was the beginning of that journey, when I started to shift into this idea that I could become something other than what I had been the whole time. So that's really where it started.
What year was that? Your first book, and what was the title?
2015 was called The Art of Apprenticeship. And my goal was to try to figure out how do I learn from other people, like not necessarily mentorship, but I wanted to go serve like the old apprentices did, where they went to sweep up all the scrap iron, or work with a candle maker and delivering things, and just learn vicariously by being present with a master. That was my purpose of this, saying if I could get in close with somebody like that, I can learn from them. But it was saying that you don't need education, which was kind of the ironic thing, right? I'm a teacher and a principal and an instructor, saying that I don't think education is the way to go to shift your life. It definitely wasn't true for me. I've
got so many areas that I want to touch on with you, but I want to talk about the TEDx talk for a second, and I want to let our viewers. It was a fascinating talk. I want to let our viewers watch a quick clip of that. Watch it right here.
What makes a good teacher great? I've collected 26,000 responses to this question in 8 different schools, from the poor schools in Los Angeles to suburban schools in Texas to elite private schools abroad. And after 24 years of teaching students, I'm still perplexed by this question. I'm going to share with you one of the most profound quotes, answers to this question that I ever received. So one day I decided I would start eating apples. I ate them in the morning, at lunch, during class, in the hall. Kids began to give me apples. They'd see me eating them and say, "You're eating an apple." I know. They would smile, and I would smile back. It wasn't until I understood that kids wanted to see me as somebody who was willing to receive a gift from them, that the apple was a symbol for our relationship. There was goodness in that and trust. In our classrooms are the future, the Maya Angelous, the Mother Teresas, the Elon Musks of the world. And can you imagine if we took the time to ask those students what would make a good teacher great? And then we actually listened. We could transform schools and education.
So when you delivered the TEDx talk, and everybody just got to watch a little clip of that, what did you think would happen with that?
I didn't think much would happen with it, to be honest, because I had that idea of the TED Talk was actually a failed book proposal. I had wrote a book proposal. I got an introduction to Dan Rohn, who was the author of the book called Back of the Napkin, and we chatted at a conference, and I told him I was working on another book, and he asked me, well, what's the book about? And I said, it's about these 20,000 responses to this one question I've asked for 24 years. He said, well, what's the question? I said, well, what makes a good teacher great? He goes, that's fascinating. That would make a best-selling book. You should talk to my agent. And that freaked me out because I was happy to be anonymous and sort of have my own book in my own world, but now to push it out to the people. So I worked on a book proposal, and I pitched it to a coach that I had who was helping me with the proposal. And it came back, and he said, honestly, Azul, this isn't that interesting. And I was terrified because I was like, this guy just told me it's great. He goes, well, the idea is great, but what you're writing here is just sort of why education's broken. It's not very interesting. He goes, but there's a few things here that you talk about when you start talking about what kids say. He goes, that's interesting. Write more about that and then get it back to me. Well, that was about the fall of 2015. And I was like, well, I don't know if this is going to work. So I got asked, by an organizer, hey, I like your ideas. I like your thinking. Would you come do this talk? And so I decided I would try it as a talk before I spent all the time writing the book, and wasn't sure if it was going to stick. So I worked with a friend. His name's Charlie Hohen, and he had done a TED Talk before and got like 90,000 views. So I knew he knew what he was doing. And he helped coach me, but the night before I rewrote it because he's like, oh, I changed this, I do this, make a different slide here. I was like, Charlie, it's tomorrow. He's like, I know, but I think it'll be better. But he had this intuition that this will be a really powerful talk if you just shift a few things. It's really good as it is, but even better if you do this. So I had no idea that it would be that powerful, but he certainly seemed like he did.
And so he believed in you, and how quick did you get results once it went out to the world? I mean, 1.9 million views is no joke.
It started slow. Like I wasn't sure what to expect. Like I was hoping to get maybe 1,000 views or something.
Yeah.
Most TEDx get 2,000 or 3,000 or less. Like they don't get very many. Even some of the good ones get 9,000 or 10,000. So I was thinking, wow, that would be incredible. So it was really slow. People started watching it, and I didn't promote it. Maybe a little bit because I was afraid that it wasn't that great. I shared it with a few friends, but it just took off on its own. So I don't really share it or talk about it too much. And it just took off like wildfire. The next time I looked, it had like 100,000 views. I'm like, who's watching this? And then I looked at the comments, and there was, hundreds of comments. So I went and would comment to everybody who would post, say thank you, or if they were negative, I would try to encourage them or try to think differently, or at least appreciate the fact that they watched it. And it's just been like that for the last several years. It's just been going and going.
I love that you put something authentic out into the world with no expectations, and it's done that. Was that your springboard? Was that what kind of propelled you, if we look back a little bit?
I don't think it did, because I was already I had already made the transition to leave traditional teaching. I got an international job working in Shanghai, and I was coaching a school. I started to coach other authors who they were more interested in the fact that I could write a book in 30 days. Like, well, how did you know what to write? How did you get this out of you? Tell me about this process. So I already started coaching authors, and they were getting phenomenal results and getting incredible results from their books, building platforms and messaging. So that's really what started to move me out of the world of education, to move me as a speaker, because I wasn't a public speaker. I mean, I spoke in front of people, but that's what led me into a world where people were contacting me out of the woodwork and asking me to come speak at their organizations or their schools. So that talk was really the one thing that did push me into more of an international world in that way. Um, and the book with that started to just bring me up, from a school teacher who didn't have much to say, or at least didn't think he did, to now having a big audience and having lots of views. People started to pay more attention, perhaps.
Yeah, and the organization, Authors Who Lead, you've coached some pretty successful authors, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, I've been so fortunate to coach people who've made the Wall Street Journal bestsellers list, people who've been number one on Amazon in their categories. In fact, most of the authors that I help have that. I would say about 99% of them. And not only that, but they've built entire businesses from them. They've reached out to me from all over the world, say, hey, you helped, I heard you helped so-and-so. Can you help me? I'm stuck. Or I have a book proposal. Or my agent says I need a little help, or whatever it is. I start helping them find their message within them, because oftentimes people get stuck in the middle, or stuck to start. They're not sure where to begin.
So a fun fact, Azul was helping me write my first book, and I thought I was doing something great until I heard in the interview, which I didn't know until just a few minutes ago, that you actually helped eighth graders write a book as well. I actually think, Azul, and you may want to confirm this, and I'm on a sixth grade level in my writing ability at the moment. So
Just so you know, John Grisham writes all his books between 6th and 8th grade level. So you're in good company. That's just that's good. We all want to be able to read that book.
yeah, well, thank you very much. And I got to tell you, Azul's got a very difficult job working with me, because it's
Not
not
at all.
easy, and I'm sure he's got some laughs on the back end. So, if somebody out there wants to write a book, how can they contact you?
Yeah, they can go to authorswholead.com. They can go there and learn more about what we do. Our focus really is on leaders who want to write a book that people love. So that's oftentimes the hardest part, is like when you're standing in a place of leadership, you're like, I really want to write something here to grow my platform, my authority, maybe my ability to speak, or get known for speaking. That's usually who comes to look for us. And oftentimes they can join one of our group programs or one of our coaching programs. And there they can take a quiz or just apply and learn a little bit more about their publishing path.
Yeah, and I want to share with some of the people a little bit, some of the people watching today, your process a little bit without giving away all of the goods. You actually take everyone through a process, and your thing is how to write a book in 30 days.
Right. Yeah, because most people think, this is my theory, is most people think that writing is hard and difficult. And really what's hard and difficult is the thinking part of writing. Like, what am I writing? Is this going to be good? What do I say? How do I do this? And so when they sit down to write, there's all this thinking going on. And so they stare at the screen, or they research, right? They're researching, but they're not really writing. So my goal is to help them realize that if they can get over their blocks and doubts about what they're supposed to be writing and what's good and not good, then the writing part is a 30-day sprint. And, you're a great testimony to that process, where the book does just come out of you, even when you think those things in your head. If you can just focus on words on a page with an hour or so a day, you can get this book out of you. But you have to know where you're going. You have to know the path you're walking on, so that you don't just spit out a long journal entry over time.
And one of the things I've learned from you is that this process, it's really an internal process. It's kind of about writing, but it's not really about writing. It's about the author and the transformation that happens with the author, and that's a unique approach, isn't it?
So what I hope for people is that they realize that there's two kinds of books. There's transactional books, the kind of books that are really useful. Like, this is how you do this. Really useful books. We need those books. But we take that information, author empties their head and dumps it in yours. You got the information. Maybe you remember where you got it from. Maybe you didn't. But the transformational books, the books that I'm talking about, the books that you're writing. It's when you have that sort of internal shift in your beliefs or focus in the world, and you start to feel different, you start to act different, you start to believe something more deeply. So that transformational book is first for the author. If the author doesn't transform, how do you expect anybody else to? It based on what you know is going to transform them, or is it how you act, how you show up in the world? And so that shift inside, people said, like, this shift that I have in this book writing process, it's like I didn't know I was going to have. I didn't realize I would be different writing a book. I thought I'd just write what I knew. And so people are always surprised by that, and I always tell them this is going to show up in your life more powerfully now than when you first started writing it, and it always seems to come true.
Yeah, it certainly has for me. How many people are you working with right now to put out books?
I think we probably have 15 books in the process at the moment, which is, it's quite a bit for a small company. But they're either going through the writing process, or they're in publishing, or they're getting ready to launch their book. So there's that many at the moment. We probably won't have any more than about 20 at a time, but more of them are like in small cohorts and groups. So some of them are in the writing phase, some are in the editing phase, and some are in the design and launching phase. So that's, we're probably publishing near 30 books a year, which that's a lot for us because we've gone up almost doubled since maybe 2 years ago, or when we were only doing about 10 or 15.
That's amazing. And you're working on a book yourself right now as well, correct?
That's correct. I am actually finally returning back to the book, What Makes a Good Teacher Great. It took a long time to wrestle myself out of the darkness of this is not any good, Azul. As you know, that it goes. My own coach is always like, Azul, like, stop it. You know what you're supposed to be doing. Like, if you don't have I need a coach to write my books, or I would never do them. And the problem is, just like I coached you, books or have book babies. When you start one, another one just starts coming up behind it and behind it. Like, you can't keep up. Pretty soon they're on top of each other. So I have several books that I've been kind of noodling out. I just finished another one about writing that I'm going to put out too. So I've got to catch up to myself here. So that book at least is done, the writing book, and I'm trying to finish up the illustrations for this newer book that kind of goes with the TED Talk. So when people see it, they'll recognize the book as, oh yeah, I remember seeing that TED Talk.
So you're looping it all in together. What percentage of people want to write a book that don't? Do you know statistics? Like, I feel like everybody wants to write a book today.
Yeah, according to the New York Times, I think 2008, they put out a study, or at least some articles that said, 81% of Americans say they have a book inside of them, but only 3% ever actually write a manuscript. So you're amongst that small percentage of people who finish a manuscript.
There's my victory. There's
your victory. The hardest part is, of that 3%, only 30% of that 3% actually ever hit publish, because all the other gremlins set in. So we're talking a fraction of 1% ever actually get published, because of the difficulty it takes to get it across the finish line. But it's a large percentage of people who really want to write a book, and without help, it can be really difficult.
That's fascinating, and I get the great experience of talking with you once a week, and I can tell you, if you're out there and you're thinking about writing a book, I'm going to do a promo for you here right now. I don't even know if you're taking on new clients, but I can tell you, Azul is the man. And if you're just thinking about it and you have any interest at all, set up a consultation call, because it is certainly well worth your time. I look forward to reading what you've got coming out next, following your career. It's super exciting that to be able to capture you in this spot where you're like 5 years into something. And I know you probably have the mentality that you're kind of only just getting started. Like 0 to 5 has really been cool. I get the sense from you that you're thinking 5 to 10 is going to be amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I get that sense, because the number of people that are coming my way, and from all different avenues, it's growing and growing. So I have to pivot and realize that, look, I have to create programs that I can incorporate more people. I can't just be one-on-one coach, because I won't be able to serve those people. So that I can feel it growing. It has an inertia as it's starting to shift, which is making me shift too.
Well, Azul, I am so grateful that I have found you. I am grateful to be able to call you friend and coach. And folks, thanks for coming on the show. Azul Terronez, check him out online if you get a chance, and we'll put the Authors Who Lead link up here as well. Watch the TED Talk. Watch this guy. He's on a path that you want to stay in touch with. Azul, we appreciate you being on People, Passion, Power. Thanks for being a guest.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Man, it's just people. passions,